I was halfway through making up the couch when he walked into the living room, a towel slung over one shoulder, his shirt clinging to his chest from the shower steam. "You don't have to do that," he said, his voice low, casual, like nothing was strange, but everything was. Because Jakey, my husband, was already passed out upstairs, and his best friend was now standing barefoot in my house with wet hair and a look I didn't know how to name. "I'm Isla. Welcome to Lust and Lies. This is my confession of regret." Jake and Connor had been best friends since college. They were inseparable in that way men sometimes are. Loud, competitive, but deeply loyal. Connor was at our wedding, gave the speech, called Jake, his brother, called me, too good for him, with a grin and a whiskey toast. Back then, it was funny. Now I'm not so sure. Jake had always trusted Connor, which meant I trusted him too. He was a fixture in our lives, Sunday games, BBQs, weekend trips. And yet, there was always something about the way Connor looked at me when Jake wasn't paying attention. Nothing obvious, nothing that crossed a line, but something, and I felt it, even if I tried not to. That night, Jake had invited Connor over after a night out. They drank too much. Jake got sloppy. By midnight, he was stumbling up the stairs, mumbling something about how the guest room was too far. And collapsing face first onto our bed. I helped him out of his shoes, covered him, kissed his forehead. He was snoring by the time I turned off the light. When I came back downstairs, Connor was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. He looked up when I entered. "You okay?" I asked. He smirked. "I think your husband might be dead." I laughed. Too loud. He handed me the water. Our fingers touched. Too long. I started setting up the couch, extra pillow, blanket. He stood there watching me, still damp, still quiet. "You don't have to," he said again. I looked up. His eyes didn't move, and mine didn't want to. The house was quiet in that way only a house full of secrets can be. Upstairs, Jake snored softly, a distant, rhythmic reminder of the man I had promised to love forever. And downstairs, Connor sat across from me on the edge of the couch like he belonged there. We didn't turn the TV on. We didn't need the noise. Instead, we talked about nothing at first, then about Jake, about how different he'd become, how distant, how tired. "He doesn't look at you the way he used to," Connor said. I froze. He took a sip of water, watched me over the rim of the glass. "I've noticed," he added, quieter. I didn't respond. What could I say? That he was right, that I'd felt invisible in my own home for over a year, that some days I forgot what it felt like to be touched like I mattered. Instead, I just looked down at my hands, fidgeted with the ring I wasn't sure meant anything anymore. Connor leaned forward. "Do you ever miss being seen?" That question. It didn't come from a man trying to flirt. It came from a man who had been watching for far too long. I nodded. Barely. And that was all it took. He moved closer, slow, measured. I didn't move. His hand reached out, brushed a loose strand of hair from my cheek. My breath hitched. His fingers lingered. Just enough to let me stop him, but I didn't. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. I could feel the warmth of his breath, could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I know," I breathed, and then his lips brushed mine, once, soft, brief, but enough to send a jolt through my spine and pull every ounce of air from my lungs. We pulled apart. Barely, but it felt like a canyon between us. "I'm sorry," he said, standing. He ran a hand through his hair, took a step back. "I'll sleep on the floor," he muttered, grabbing the blanket. I sat there, heart racing, mouth still tingling, not speaking, because if I did, I might ask him to come back. The next morning, I found Connor in the kitchen, hair tousled, white t-shirt, barefoot. He handed me coffee without a word. Our fingers didn't touch this time, but our eyes did, and neither of us looked away. Jake stumbled in minutes later, yawning, rubbing his neck. "God," he muttered. "I feel like I got hit by a truck." I forced a smile. Felt Connor watching me behind his mug. Jake didn't notice. He never did. He sat, scrolled through his phone, and didn't say a word when I got up to clear his plate. Connor stood too, took his cup to the sink. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, in silence. Then, just before he left the kitchen, his hand brushed the small of my back. So slight, but my entire body reacted like it had been set on fire. Jake left for work an hour later. Some emergency. Some meeting. He kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks for being cool last night." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone with his best friend. The air in the house changed the second the front door shut. Still, tense. Connor didn't pretend. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. I tried to focus on the dishes, on anything, but I felt him, his gaze, his heat, his breath. "You keep pretending last night didn't happen," he said quietly. I turned. "It can't happen again." He took a step forward. "But you want it to?" My silence answered for me. He walked toward me, not fast, not hesitant, with intent. I didn't move, couldn't. When he reached me, he didn't touch me. Not yet. He leaned down, his mouth near my ear. "Say stop," he whispered. I didn't. His lips found mine again. But this time, there was nothing soft about it. His hands were on my waist, mine tangled in his shirt. We crashed into the counter, into each other, into everything we'd both been holding back. He lifted me onto the edge of the kitchen island. My legs wrapped around him. Clothes shifted. Breath shortened. We didn't speak. Didn't look away. Didn't stop. Not until it was over. Not until silence filled the space where guilt had started to grow. I sat there, skin still warm, heart still racing. He stepped back, ran both hands through his hair. "We just broke every rule," he said. I nodded, and I hated how much I didn't regret it. Connor left before lunch. No goodbye, no message, just gone. And maybe that was mercy. Maybe he knew I needed space to feel the full weight of what I had just let happen. I stood in the shower for almost an hour, let the water burn my skin, but it couldn't wash away the memory of his hands, his breath, his voice, and worst of all, how much I had wanted it. Jake came home early that evening, brought takeout, made small talk, like nothing had happened, because for him, nothing had. He asked me how I felt, but not really. Not in a way that meant he wanted the truth. When I told him I felt distant lately, he nodded, then reached for the remote, and I knew he hadn't just stopped seeing me. He'd stopped caring. That hurt more than anything. The next few days were quiet. Jake back to work, me walking through rooms that now felt like crime scenes. I avoided mirrors, avoided my phone, avoided thinking about what I would do if Connor ever came back. But he did. A week later, I found him on our porch, leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets. "I shouldn't be here," he said. And yet, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. We didn't kiss that night, didn't touch. We just talked, really talked, about how long he'd been holding it in, about how he thought he was just imagining my looks, about how it wasn't just lust anymore. He said he tried not to feel anything, because I was his best friend's wife, because I was supposed to be off limits. But feelings don't care about rules, he whispered, and I knew I was already too far gone. That night, Jake fell asleep watching TV. Connor and I stood in the hallway, just a few feet apart, so close, so far. We didn't say goodbye, we just looked at each other, and in that look, everything we felt but couldn't say out loud poured through. Jake started noticing. Maybe it was the way I flinched when he touched my lower back, or the way I stared a little too long at a text I never replied to. Or maybe it was something simpler, a change in the way I kissed him goodnight. He didn't ask questions, but he looked at me differently, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he was afraid to understand. I couldn't sleep, not for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Connor's face, heard his voice, felt everything I wasn't supposed to feel. I stopped replying to his messages, didn't open the door when he came back a second time, and when he called, I let it ring, because I knew if I saw him again, I wouldn't stop, and this time, there would be no going back. Jake took me out for dinner the following weekend. He was trying. I could see it in the way he straightened his collar, the way he ordered my favorite wine without asking. And for a moment, I thought maybe I could choose safety. Maybe I could forgive myself and forget everything else. But then he reached for my hand, and I didn't feel a thing. Not warmth, not connection, not even guilt. Just emptiness. I never told him. I never told anyone. Not about the kiss. Not about the kitchen. Not about how, for one night, I belonged to someone who wasn't mine, and maybe never really was. I'm Isla, and this is the story I'll carry quietly, shamefully forever. This was my true infidelity story.